All right, what's up, YouTube? Woo! Yeah! All right, today is the season finale of my music series, Season 1. Now, these are two very important names in the music industry. These two names are synonymous with greatness. Both individuals are legends, both individuals are icons. Both individuals are all-time greats. I here bring to you in season 1, season finale of my music series, the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Woo! The greatest of all times, Michael Jackson, versus Purple Rain, Prince. Woo! Yeah, I know that's way over the top, but when it's the season finale, you got to go out with a bang. And when you go out with a bang, you got to make a very big impression. Now, we're going to start with Prince first. Now, Prince got his start in the 1970s. Now, he was a part of a band. You might find it hard to believe, but he was in a band. And he eventually got recognized when they saw that he was good at writing songs. He started off as a songwriter and wrote 2 or 3 songs for himself. Then he partnered up with another famous musician you all know very well at this point. Well, some of you. That was Rick James. Oh yeah, him and Rick James didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And Rick James broke away and became famous, and Prince, not wanting to let no one outshine him, he ended up, creating this new persona for himself. Now, he put out an album, and the album went platinum overnight. And he put out Apollonius, because a lot of people was curious what the hell. So Prince Prince was like another version of Queen. I mean, that's the best way I could sum it up. He was another version of Queen. I mean, he made Apollonius, and it was a big hit. And then right in the middle of his prime, he comes out wearing all purple. At one point, he bleached his hair purple. He had the eyelash, the eyeshadow, the purple jacket. He comes with a guitar. And at this point in time in history, you could probably say that Queen was kind of a nice inspiration for him, because all of a sudden he makes a song called Purple Rain. He comes out with a motorcycle, and you're like, oh fuck, oh shit. Like, who does this? Like, who goes on stage with a purple motorcycle dressed in all purple and names the album and the fucking song Purple Rain, and then say it's about when it rains, it's purple? I mean, no one had never seen no shit like that. I mean, in fact, when he did that, he had proved everybody wrong that he could do better without certain people. And this was just his first solo album. And then, of course, we get to 1975, 1976, and right in the middle of him doing album number 2, he did back-to-back albums. So he had 2 albums, and right in the midst of him doing album number 3, he meets a female talent who's from Toronto, Canada, whose family originally from Detroit, Michigan, and he meets this girl and looks at her and gives her a name called Vanity, and he signs her. Like they thought he was insane. They was like, how can you sign a female talent in the middle of your career? And he basically pulled the trump card out of his ass like Queen did and say, "'Cause I can." And next thing you know, she signed. He do 7 songs with her. He put out her first album. Who do you think put out the vocal tracks and laid out the song Nasty Girl, Nasty Girl? Do you want to be with me? Do you want to be a nasty girl? Do you want to come with me? Do you want to be in a nasty world? I mean, who do you think came up with that creative song? It was Prince who did that. I mean, I was nodding my head to that song who did so many damn times that my mom looked at me and said, "You know it's Prince that did that, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And come on, the first Batman movie, Come on, the first 1989 Batman movie. He did the fucking soundtrack. What artist do you know that gets to do almost 5 damn songs on the Batman soundtrack? Like, he actually got a call from Warner Brothers and say, "Hey, we need somebody to come down here and do some songs for the Batman soundtrack." They called Prince. They could have called anybody else, but they called Prince. He did that first Batman soundtrack. His songs were being played in the damn movie. How often does that ever actually happen? Never. And then, of course, to take it one step further than that, he comes about and he makes a sequel album to Purple Rain. Just as good as that album. Then, of course, there's one Doug's Clyde. Dun, 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 oh, dun, 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 oh, wow. When doves cry. Dun, 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 dun. When doves cry. And then, of course, let's not forget Party Like 1999. Oh, yeah. That was a good album, too. And by the time we got into the 90s, you know, there were a couple of lawsuits. You know, he was fighting back and forth to studios. You know, there was an album he wanted out, and they didn't want to put the album out, so he ended up having to switch labels, you know. And this was an album he was trying to get out for 10 years. And by this point, he had already put out like at least 7 to 8 albums. And in that 10-year gap, he was trying to get out this one special album. They didn't want this album to come out. And then he puts it out on the Prince Greatest of All Times album. And by the time we got to 2001, 2002, Prince was on stage doing all his songs. And you know the controversial, you know, Kim Kardashian was on stage and, you know, he felt that she was disrespecting him and he told her, you know, get your young ass off stage, and everyone just went crazy into shit. He performed at a Super Bowl, you know, again, and then of course the legend of Prince just kept growing. You know, there were movies, television specials, television films, there were books, magazines, posters, a clothing line, action figures. I mean, the legend just kept growing. And then finally, he wrote at least 3 books about his life story. And he toured everywhere. You know, he would go to Mexico, he would go to Canada, he would go to Japan, he would go to New Zealand. He would tour everywhere. You know, he crossed over from doing pop to pop rock to funk to, you know, R&B to a little bit of some heavy metal rock and roll. And then to cross over again and do music with other famous rock musicians. You know, that's how Prince was. And then finally, you know, closer to the later 2000s, he put out his 10th or his 11th album. So he ended up with 11 albums. Now, it's unfortunate and it's tragic that by the time we got to like 2016, you know, he had an allergic reaction to something, to some medication, and he was heartbroken because he lost, you know, he heard that Vanity had passed away, and he was very heartbroken because if you go 25 years back, he signed her, and he was responsible for her first album being so successful. And them two actually had a relationship at one point, and she wanted to turn away and go into the movies and television shows, and at that point, Prince had went from an artist to a songwriter to a producer to an entrepreneur because he had his own business. And I don't know how true this was, but at one point he was going to do an actual collaboration with Michael Jackson, but it never got off the ground. Some people claim those were talks, those were rumors, those were urban legends. That never was the case. And when he had his allergic reaction and he passed away, a lot of people were shocked. A lot of people were stunned that Prince passed away. It was like, oh shit, we lost another legend in the music business. All of a sudden, we see Mountain Dew commercials that are in tribute to Prince. This lets you know that to this day, people still listen to his music. I remember when I was a little kid, it was, are you a Prince fan or are you a Michael Jackson fan? And if you were a Prince fan and people told you got to wear a Purple Rain shirt, you got to wear it if you're a Prince fan. People would quiz you and go, what is his first song on his first album? Some people would just say Purple Rain. And if you were a Michael Jackson fan, it was the same thing. This is when I was a little kid. I remember at one point, Michael Jackson had did Pepsi, and Prince ended up doing Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew. You know, back when we had the, Coca-Cola Pepsi wars. They would just take different artists and have them go against each other because they thought it would be fun to do that. But Prince had a great career, 10 to 11 albums. A lot of people to this day still stunned and shocked that it's been 3 years and Prince is gone. And to this day, people still play his music. People from the 1970s, people that were born in the 80s, the 90s, and even a new generation has gotten hipped to Prince. So the legend of Prince will forever continue. Now, his opponent, Michael Jackson. Now, Michael Jackson, as we know, is from Gary, Indiana. We know Prince is from, Minnesota or Massachusetts. And Michael Jackson was a hometown boy. Now, we know there was the Jackson 5. And the Jackson 5 made 3 albums together. Remember that song, ABC? ABC, 1, 2, 3. That was a hit. And right off the back, Michael Jackson was center stage. Nobody else wanted to talk to the other Jacksons. They just wanted to see Michael Jackson. And early on, you could tell that in the 1970s, he was going to be a big future superstar. And the person who saw this, Motown Records saw this, Sony saw this, Warner Brothers saw, every major studios that had to do music saw he was going to be a big star later. I don't think nobody knew how big. Not just yet. And it wasn't until Quincy Jones came in and told Michael, you're going to be a big star. Michael said, yeah, I know. And Quincy said, no. I said, you're going to be a big star. And next thing you know, by the time we got into the late 70s, early 1980s, Michael didn't want to do no more group albums. They was going to do a Jackson 5 4 album. It was going to actually do 4 albums as a group. Michael broke away, signed a $1 million deal, and as they say, the rest is history. And next thing you know, Michael Jackson makes songs that to this day you still cannot stop nodding your head to. Dun, 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 dun. It's a dark night. I'm wanting to bring some run the brain. It's not that thriller night. Who takes a theme of Halloween and makes it into a 5-minute video? It was unseen. It was unheard. Once again, you have to ask the question. Queen must have inspired Michael Jackson to do that, because the only person at the time that would take a song that damn long and do it was Queen. Michael Jackson done it. As if that wasn't enough. Dun, 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 dun. Who's bad? Dun, 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 dun. Who's bad? All of a sudden, here comes the Bad album. Your butt is mine. Dun, dun. No one to bring. Come on, Shona. Dun, dun, dun. And you see the guy on the skates roll back. You're like, oh shit. And then Beat It. Dun, 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 dun. Beat it, now let's start. It don't matter who started first, just beat it, dum dum, just beat it, just beat it, dum dum, just beat it. He took another concept, and even though these were long videos, you could never tell when the song would end. It's like every time he popped out a song, he was unpredictable. You just could never catch the end of the song. Like, it would go on, you'd be like, man. And then just when you think Michael Jackson would stop, no, he couldn't. There was dun 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 dun. Billie Jean, not my lover. She just a girl that I never went. But the kid's not my son. Dun, dun, dun. Then he comes out with another song, and as we get further into the 1990s, remember the time when we first kissed, remember the time, Magic Johnson, Eddie Murphy, Debo, they were all in that song, where he made a song about Egypt, and he took the girl from, Eddie Murphy and basically saved the girl from, being married off in an arranged marriage, Michael Jackson just kept coming with the hits. And let's not forget that there was that controversial, Pepsi thing where his hair got set on fire. I remember that as a little kid, and that was not very good. I mean, your hair. I mean, come on, your hair. He does a commercial for Pepsi, and let's not forget when AC Hammer took the Michael Jackson glove and put it in a song. I mean, to be doing that was disrespectful. Like, it was disrespectful of AC Hammer to do that. And how your career turned out, AC Hammer. I mean, how did your career turn out after you did that? Not very good, did it? Yeah, you learned your lesson, huh? I mean, to be hanging out with the President of the United States of America, Ronald Reagan, it does not get any better to wear your glove and you're with the President. It don't get no better than that. And then you tour in Japan, China, Asia, Korea. You tour in Mexico, Canada, New Zealand. You go all over the world touring, and people just love them some Michael Jackson. And we all know about the controversial, he buys Neverland Ranch. You don't talk to his dad for almost 10 years. There's a rift in the family. And then there's he gets accused of all these crimes. And when they find out that Michael Jackson loved to buy nude magazines, it's like, Michael Jackson ain't no punk, man. It's like, what's wrong with y'all? This is a king of pop. He did The Way You Make Me Feel. And let's not forget when he did that song called Scream with Janet Jackson. When he called his sister and said, let's do this project together, he showed that he could still, even after all this time, still be unpredictable. Brother and sister doing a song together. In fact, some people didn't even think Michael Jackson was into rap music. And right in the 1990s, he helped out Notorious B.I.G. And it's like, again, Michael Jackson shows his creativity and shows that he's that good of an artist. And by the time we got to the later 2000s, he does a song with Chris Tucker, because Chris Tucker would do impersonations of Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson found that very impressive that someone could do his impressions on film. And he ended up doing a song, ended up doing, 2 songs with Chris Tucker. He's performed at the NBA Finals and, the Super Bowl. And let's not forget that duet with Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears is the stuff of legends. I mean, again, Michael shows right off the bat that he can influence people. And this is in 2002, by the way. Now, it's unfortunate that he had to leave and go to London and get away from the press when they just kept hounding him in court. He was to come to court. He didn't want to come to court, and by that time period, people was upset because the last 3 Michael Jackson albums in the 2000s, they weren't exactly the albums of the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. He'd been around for at that point, 3 decades, literally, and people were just not happy with those last 3 albums. And he disappeared for a while. There were movies and television shows made about his life story. There are like 6 books of his life story. Magazines, posters, action figures, trading cards, the Michael Jackson glove, the hat. And Michael Jackson used to have a monkey named Bubbles. Some of you may not remember that, but he used to have a monkey before, something tragic happened to the monkey, things of that nature. And then, of course, he comes back out of retirement and gives us this album called This Is It, which he was going to do his final curtain call. But unfortunately, tragedy befell Michael Jackson. And I remember for the whole month, it was Michael Jackson month. You walked up the street, you walked down the street, all you heard was Michael Jackson playing all of his songs. In fact, you could be going to a nightclub and that's all they would play is Michael Jackson, because it was Michael Jackson's month. I remember as a kid, they had this one commercial I'll never forget. It's sometimes hard to pull up on the internet because it's, it's owned by Sony, it's owned by Warner Brothers, it's copyrighted infringement. And usually when you try to play the video, it ain't got no sound. It's Michael Jackson coming into an empty basketball court and challenging Michael Jordan to a game of one-on-one pickup basketball. Like, Michael's playing, and when Michael turn around, Michael looks at Michael, and Michael Jordan's like, "Oh my God, it's Michael Jackson." And Michael is moon dancing, moonwalking, and Michael Jordan is like, "I'm gonna hit this three on you." And Michael Jackson's like, "You ain't gonna do nothing." And Michael's like, "All right." Michael tried to go for a dunk, got blocked. And you're like, what the hell? It's just certain things. To this day, Michael Jackson still goes down in history as one of the best. Now, when it comes to asking the question, who is the greatest of all times? Both guys are both great. Both guys are legends. Both guys are icons. But you can't deny that in the beginning, Prince, in the very beginning, was better than a lot of artists. And then Michael Jackson just came out of nowhere like Superman and just beat everybody and took over the game for 3 decades and surpassed even Prince. And when you surpass Prince and you surpass everyone else, everyone's gonna want to call and hang out with you. Missy Elliott wanted to do a song with Michael Jackson, and it's powerful influence. To this very day, when people get in the industry and they say, if you had a chance to work with either Prince or Michael Jackson, about 99.99% of the time, Michael Jackson's name always comes up in the conversation. Missy Elliott wanted to be a huge fan of Michael Jackson, wanted to do songs. Remember that terrible Mummy movie? Remember the actress that played the Mummy? She got to do a song with Michael Jackson as a backup dancer. And Michael Jackson discovered her, and all of a sudden she's doing music videos. You can look it up. Britney Spears said one of her inspirations is Michael Jackson. You ask Christina Aguilera, one of her inspirations is Michael Jackson. Every time somebody do some dance moves like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, they also got to do a couple of, tributes to Michael Jackson. And they even mentioned that if they had the chance, they would work alongside the King of Pop. So he's that big, influential person that has a powerful influence to this very day. So when people do dance off, they usually do it in tribute of Michael Jackson. So I would say by a big margin, Michael edges out Prince in this video. I mean, I'm just stating the obvious here. You're not going to find someone that can get the world's best film director, Mark Scorsese, to do your music videos. He directed at least 2 or 3 of Michael Jackson's videos. Half music, half movie. Who does that? I mean, you look at Chris Brown, you look at Neo, you look at Tyrese, you look at Usher. All these guys all were inspired by Michael Jackson. If it weren't for Michael Jackson, you would have never got no Backstreet Boys, no NSYNC. You would have never got a Chris Brown, a Neo. You would have never got a Tyrese or an Usher if it was not for Michael Jackson. Same thing with Prince. You would probably never have gotten a Lenny Kravitz if it weren't for Prince. I mean, you just got to look at these 2 icons. They influence people. And when you look at it 15 years later, 20 years later, those 2 names, they come up out of people's mouths. So this is the season finale. Until next time, peace.